Well, let me start by welcoming those who've attended and who are attending to the beginning of this semester's Keeping Current seminar, which will happen every Wednesday, sponsored in part by the Industrial Partners organization, for whom we have to thank for the delicious cookies that you have, I hope. You should order takeout, I guess, on their account. And today we have two speakers. The traditional beginning is the chair. And so let me introduce Dr. Brent Seals.
Thank you, Rafi. It's great to be here. It is tradition that first Keeping Current seminar of the semester, usually in the fall, right, Rafi, would be introduced by me as the department chair or whoever the current department chair is. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you can see my slide deck in this venue. Let's make sure that works. Go into presentation mode. Can everybody see that? Is that working? Somebody give me a thumbs up. They can see the shared screen. Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, so it's tradition, and this seminar is a weekly seminar that we've had as a longstanding venue where we can talk about new and emerging work and ideas. So it's our computer science department-wide forum, and part of what I do in welcoming you to the department is that I also welcome you to Keeping Current and hope that you'll follow us as we go through the semester's topics, and perhaps you'll even consider engaging by offering a 30-minute talk during the course of the semester. You can get on the schedule by talking to the organizer, Professor Rafi Finkel, and he will help you find a date and hone your topic so that we can all benefit from it. Our normal protocol, of course, is that we would be meeting in person in our beautiful theater, which is in the Davis Marksbury building. This would be our colloquium. Our new protocol for fall 2020, and I think this is a continuation of what you had to pivot to in the spring, is to do this forum via Zoom so that we can stay safe while we get back on track during the COVID pandemic. So you'll be seeing emails from Professor Finkel with Zoom links so that you can join in. I'm not sure if that Zoom link will be a moving target week to week or if it'll be the same link every time, but watch your emails and you'll be able to go ahead and follow along.
I plan to make it the same every week if possible.
Okay. I would also like to point to our Industry Partners Association because they sponsor this, and normally we would be sharing snacks together in an in-person forum. We're not able to do that this fall, but nevertheless, the sponsorship of our industry partners is very important, so I acknowledge them. And on this page, you see at the bottom, there is a link to our sponsorship page that describes our industry partners. You can go there and take a look. So I would like to acknowledge the important and continued support of these industry partner members. And I would also like to acknowledge the leadership by Dr. Jane Hayes, who's one of our faculty members, as the associate chair. She manages this partnership program on behalf of the faculty. So by way of introduction, let me say that I'm coming back to the department chair's role after having been on sabbatical for the 2019-20 academic year. While I was gone, many of you may know that the department was led by a leadership team consisting of Professor Zhengming Fei, Professor Nathan Jacobs, and Professor Jane Hayes. And I want to thank them for their strong leadership while I was on sabbatical. I've returned. It's a bit of a different year, but nevertheless, I love this department. I love my job, and I love being able to give this talk because it always brings back, for me, how important our work is and how much I care about being in this role and about how this department moves forward. So I will, at some point, I hope, have a chance to talk to you about my sabbatical year and what I was able to do. I was at the Getty in Los Angeles, California, which you see in this picture in the foreground. In the near background, you see the campus of the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, and in the far field, you see Los Angeles, California. But that's not for today. What I'm going to talk about today is I'm actually going to continue a tradition that I started as chair when I began all those years ago. And this tradition is to look at the Mary Meeker Internet Report and talk about some trends. It's particularly interesting this year because, well, you'll find out. Let me start by saying the last time I talked about the Meeker Report was in 2019, at the beginning of the last academic year, I guess 2018, the 18-19 academic year. And so I'm going to go back to the Meeker report that I skipped, which is 2019, start there, and then take us up to our present so that we can see some interesting trends that have to do, of course, with COVID. First thing to point out, Meeker report kicks off with this really interesting graph that shows global internet penetration as of 2018, meeting the tipping point. In a democracy, we talk about majority rule. So 50% has, that connotation. Penetration has now, over the past decade, moved from 24% globally to 51%, meaning that 3.8 billion of the world's population, which is more than 50%, are global internet users. So that's an interesting graph. And I want to focus in on two of the trends that Mary Meeker picked in her 2019 report. Talk about them in a little bit of detail, then point you to what I think is a really interesting comprehensive report, and then the follow-on report that came out in 2020, which I'll talk about in a minute. So we'll take work and we'll take education, numbers 7 and 8 on the internet trends list that you can see here from Mary Meeker's report of 2019. But I'm going to take them in the opposite order because first education, then jobs. We're in the business of running our programs and welcoming you so that you can get your credentials and then get jobs. Sometimes those happen simultaneously for those of you who are working in research or part-time work while you come to our program. But let me show you a couple of trends from Mary Meeker's report. Summary, big numbers and big growth. All right, let's look at education. Here's an interesting trend. If you look at the left-hand graph of undergraduate tuition and fees, and I think you can see my cursor, I hope. For a long time in the 70s, about a decade, tuition remained flat. And then something happened in the early 80s that caused a steep incline in the private nonprofit world for tuition, and then a mimicking curve that increasingly has become steeper in the public sector. This represents the increased cost of tuition and fees for undergraduate education. You also see on the right-hand side a graph with time on the horizontal axis and student loan debt on the vertical axis, and you see constant increase in the level of student loan debt nationwide in this country. These are two forcing functions that have affected higher education and education in general. Let me show you the second thing that Mary Meeker points out. In terms of enrollments, you see a peak in offline educational enrollment. And that's what we would consider ourselves at the University of Kentucky. We're an offline institution. Our programs are meant to be run in person, face-to-face. And you see around about 2015 or 16, I would say, maybe a little earlier, we saw a peak and then the beginning of declining enrollments. These are 2-year undergraduate, 4-year undergraduate, and any graduate all on the same axis, time on the horizontal and millions of students in terms of enrollment on the vertical axis. On the right-hand side, you see another interesting trend, and that's a declining number of post-secondary students who are in only offline classes. And what we can infer maybe from this curve, that over the past 6 years or 8 years, we have declining students in only offline programs, that we must have some commensurate increase in students being online. So again, this is all pre-COVID, Mary Meeker 2019. Let me show you another trend from this report. You see the top 50 post-secondary online enrollment leaders as of 2017. In the public sector, total enrollment of 500,000 students. In the private sector, for-profit, another 500,000. In the private sector, not for profit, 330K. A total of over 1 million students from this report already enrolled in online educational programs. Likewise, we see institutions that are typically considered offline ramping up their online offerings. This is all happening prior to COVID. So you see the timeline from 2016 to 2019, and then a movement of some pretty big named schools toward online programs. Notably, 2018, you see Arizona State University standing up a Master's of Computer Science. And then in 2019, you see a lot of technical related programs, in fact, related to our programs: computer science, information and technology, applied data science, Master of Science in Electrical Engineering. Let me also point out that online education with respect to Coursera shows a breakdown where 80% of their revenue comes from things that we'd consider perhaps strongly related to our particular fields in the university. So what I want to point out is that Mary Meeker is looking at the trend overall in education toward online, and this is pre-COVID, 2019. But in particular, if we look at computer science, we see a very strong trend toward topics we all care about and we know a lot about: deep learning, Python, data science, Google IT Support Professional Certificate. These are the Coursera purely online courses being offered as top specializations in 2018. It's a pretty interesting trend. So let me summarize the education side of what I've pulled for you today from the Mary Meeker report. Offline enrollments are declining, online enrollments are growing. The learning platforms that people are using to support that online work are varied, but can support going to scale. There's strong interest in online education, and there is some financial incentive due to increased tuition costs, heavy debt. But then the counterpart to that is that retention and completion rates vary pretty widely. And I didn't show you that graph, but if you follow the report, you can see more information on that. So summary: more growth, more users, more choice in education, thanks to the internet. All right, let me look at work. Strong economic indicators in 2019, and Mary Meeker would say that one of the reasons why those economic indicators are strong is because jobs and services are internet enabled. In other words, the internet is helping, technology is helping create for us a strong economy. Let me show you some graphs that are interesting. So on the left, you see the year 2016 through 18 on the horizontal axis. And what you see on the vertical axis is a doubling in the number of on-demand consumers for on-demand, what's called on-demand goods and services. And this doubling in number from 25 million to 56 million, almost 60, occurred in a very, very short time span. On-demand consumers would be those of us who use Uber or Uber Eats or other kinds of services that allow you through the internet to get some kind of good or service on demand. So these products span a number of marketplaces, and on the right you see the enormous market potential of on-demand consumerism. You have total 30 billion in online marketplaces. You see transportation approaching 15 billion. This is with a B. That's a lot of money. Those are big market sectors. So a very strong trend in the last 3 years toward consumerism that is on demand. In terms of the people driving those platforms, you see a commensurate increase in the number of workers who are involved in on-demand type work. A 22% annual increase over the past 4 years, from 2.4 million workers in 2015 to 6.6 million in 2018. So a huge escalation in opportunity for workers in this sector. Previously unemployed, from this survey anyway, was one of the biggest motivations, but you also see some other pretty strong motivators like flexible work hours, additional income, the ability to upgrade and learn new skills. These are all benefits that people report when they responded to this survey as motivations for wanting to be involved in on-demand work. Also, we see the number of remote workers rising. Now, this is not on demand per se, but it's people who are doing their work, but are doing it in a remote context. But what I think is really interesting about this, and as I come to a conclusion of the Mary Meeker part of my talk, I want you to imagine what is going to be happening with the percent total of remote workers when we go past the 2016 on the graph, and we go through the barrier of 2020 and the COVID pandemic. You see here we have we have consistent growth in the number of total remote workers, but not very fast-paced growth. From 2000, which is basically 2 decades ago, to just a few years ago, we grew from 3% to 5%. So I think that's actually really interesting, because while the on-demand sector has been growing, people doing remote work has been growing, but at a very, very slow pace over the past 2 decades. It's rising, but not quickly. So here are the trends. We have a strong economy in 2019. Mary Meeker would argue that on-demand work is creating opportunities for work and for efficiencies that create jobs for people and also motivate them to learn new skill and to have a flexible work schedule. We also see remote work steadily growing, and internet-enabled remote work creates opportunities and efficiencies that we would not have without it. And the remote work environment creates internet-enabled benefits. All right, so let's talk about what Mary Meeker said in 2019 may become eventually our work environment. I don't know how many of you this applies to, but do we do our work by Zoom in the day? I snipped this straight out of her 2019 deck. And then we play video games, again, digitally connected by the internet at night, Fortnite, for example. Is this our life? Well, she could not, no one could have predicted the pandemic, but I encourage you to take a look at the rest of the story, which you can find in the 2020 COVID report, a special report from the Mary Meeker Group, not in the same style as her succession of internet reports, but instead focused on specifically on COVID and on trying to understand what she calls our new world. And you see 2 graphs here that I snipped briefly just so that you can understand that pretty much every graph is going to look like a hockey stick, where an inflection occurs in February or March of 2020. And in particular, look at the one on the right where Zoom was released as a product in January of 2013 and grew slowly over a decade, well, 7 years, to 10 million users. And then in 3 months, went from 10 million users to 200 million users, okay? This is the kind of impact that we're seeing from COVID. On the education sector, of course, we have a transformation going on. And on the right-hand side, you see Google Classroom weekly active users flatlined over 2019 at 5 million. And then the inflection point and exponential growth. So really, really interesting. A bunch of hockey sticks, and paying attention to what role technology is going to play and how it's going to affect our work, our life, and our education, I think is really important. Okay, so I hope you found that interesting. I did, certainly, putting it together. What I want to do now is finish my talk by pointing out some things about our department that I think are important and interesting, and that will serve us well as we go through the fall semester. A few numbers for our department that I just cherry-picked. We have a new program in data science. It's a master's program. We're really excited about it. We stood it up over the course of the last couple of years. It takes time. And it's been in effect for a year now, and our enrollment is at 11 students. And this program is led by the Director of Graduate Studies for it, who is Professor Nathan Jacobs. And we're really proud of how this program is going to add to what we can offer to our students. So if you're interested in knowing more about that program, or you want to send information to other people who are interested in what you're doing, talk to Nathan Jacobs and take a look at our webpage. Our total undergraduate enrollment this year looks to be in the vicinity of 600. Last year, the firm number we had was about 585. So on the strength of 26 faculty members, we have over 600 undergraduates and about 80 or 85 graduate students. We're not sure the numbers quite yet. And we jointly run a program with the computer engineering department to increase our enrollment at the undergraduate level by another couple hundred students from that jointly run program. There are other numbers and there are other new programs. I won't focus on everything today, but I encourage you to take a look at our web pages so that you can see the variety of things that we offer by way of information, and also so that you can connect with people. Our faculty, 26 strong, in addition to the adjuncts who are in other departments, are all available for you to look at on our webpage. And if you follow this webpage, and I'll go ahead and click on this and see if we can make it work, you can see that everybody's here with beautiful pictures. And if you'd like to find out more information about any particular faculty member, you can go and click on them and find their email address, find their phone number, and give them a call. So I encourage you to do that. To learn more about everyone's research areas, let's see, full screen, okay. And to find out information about our campus footprint and about how you can stay engaged. We do have facilities on campus, and despite everything that we've had to do to mitigate the pandemic, our buildings are open, and you can find help if you want to come by and ask. So the Marksbury building, which now I think is, we're a decade in, I think. The Marksbury building maintains the presence of the home office for the computer science department. And we're open 8:30 to 4:30 every day. And until the campus shuts down, that'll be true. So you can come by if you need to and talk to us, or you can of course go ahead and engage people by email and by phone to set up times where you can either chat with them by Zoom or send email or call them on the phone. Footprint of this building is available online, but just to show you that we have a leadership suite, and when you do come by the building, because of COVID, we're tracking everybody in and out. Just check in with the receptionist, make sure that we maintain the big four for being on campus, which is that you're checking your daily survey, and you're wearing a mask so that you're safe with a piece of personal protective equipment. And also we are socially distancing, so we have that set up. And we also have sanitary stations within the building so that if you need to wash your hands, which you should be doing, then you can. An alternative part of where our faculty are housed is in the Hardiman building, right across from the Marksbury building. You can find it on the same corner of Rose and Maxwell Street. I guess that would be me. Sorry about that. And we have faculty housed in the second floor of that building as well. We ask you when you need to find people to come to the main building right now. so that we can limit foot traffic through multiple buildings. We have our staff in the main building in Marksbury so that we can greet you if you have trouble or need anything. So yeah, you can see we're open, subject to COVID, and this is sort of our air quote because COVID disclaimer. You can see my office. I have all the appropriate gear so that when you come to see me, we can make sure we remain socially distanced and we have our protective equipment on. I also point you in the directory to our staff who are ready and willing to help. And you can find every staff and their role listed on our webpage so that if you need help with advising, the advisors are listed. If you need help with payroll or IT support, you can find the staff and contact them directly. And I'm sure they'll be willing to help. And if they can't help you directly, they'll point you to someone who can. All right, I want you to take note of some important upcoming events that have to do with College of Engineering. Of course, Labor Day is a little different this year. We're going to be in class on Labor Day. It's September 7th. And immediately after, you'll see the Career Connections will be taking place. It's a college level event. And I want to point you especially here to September 9th, which is the Wildcat Cage competition. I don't know how familiar you all are with that, but it's a competition that will be bringing investors to the table, kind of like a Shark Tank style event. And you can participate, you can come to watch. There are going to be pitches. I think this is kind of interesting. So I'd encourage you to take a look, see if that's something that you might want to do. Also on this calendar, you see that the Engineering and Computer Science Career Fair will be held on the 22nd of September. That's also another really important date for you because that's a place where you can connect not only to our industry partners, but also to other people who are participating in that fair. So take a look out for that. Scan the web pages for information. And of course, save these notes so that you don't miss any of these dates. All right, I want to finish by just pointing you to the student groups that are really important in the life of our programs and in student life. The ACMW and the Student ACM, both linked here, offer opportunities for you to engage. And so you should take advantage of those by checking out what the groups are offering. I have some information here. The next meeting for the ACMW is going to be tomorrow at 5 p.m. Here's the Zoom link, which you can grab just by writing down that last number, or if you copied the link to these slides, the deck will be available for you. You can go to the ACMW webpage, linked right here, and you can see a really nice layout that gives a statement of what the student group is about, what they do, and other information that will help you connect. So I encourage you to do that if that interests you. And then likewise, the Student ACM, in coordination with the ACMW, these student chapters work with each other, will be having their first meeting of the semester. Their next ACM meeting will be tomorrow right after the ACMW meeting. That'll be at 6 p.m. There's a shortened Zoom link there and a second event link as well as a web page link for their group. So you see a little bit of information as well about the Student ACM. In particular, take a look at Cat Hacks. I know this has been a really successful event in the past. It looks like it's going to be postponed until sometime this fall. Take a look at that and see if you can get involved. All right, I've just about run my time, so I want to summarize. Try to hit the button here on the time limit. So welcome to all of you. I'm glad you joined. We have a variety of programs, but no matter what program you're in, we're glad you're here and we're here to help. I'd like to invite you to feel free to locate and set up meetings with all of our staff and our faculty. Get yourself familiar with who we are and what we do. I would like to remind you that we are carefully observing all COVID measures, and despite the fact that campus is open, we recognize there are important protocols in place and we're carefully abiding by them. And let me just encourage you to engage every chance you get. Don't use the current difficult situation as an excuse to not engage when it's possible to be involved. Wishing you the best this fall. Thanks, and any questions? I'm assuming, Rafi, you can moderate or read to me
Yes.
anything in the chat that might be there.
There's nothing in the chat at the
Okay.
moment. Great. Well, thank you very much, Brent.
Thank you.
And of course, any questions about the department go first to the chair.